Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to my session today on how to prepare for great job interviews. Everyone has been keeping up well. I know I'm trying to, with a little bit of cough and not feeling so great, but here I am today to share some thoughts and a little bit of discussion, I suppose, to help all of you today on how to prepare for great job interviews. I know this is a very hot topic among so many people who want to get through the interview sessions. There's some tough ones and not so tough ones, and I know that all of you have burning questions for me today. So what happened was early this morning, I posted up the event poster, and I did ask all of you to share with me some of your burning questions that you may want to ask of me so that I can answer them today. So I have reserved that particular questions. Those are burning questions. Many actually came in through the DM and WhatsApp. I have reserved those portion of questions towards the end of the session, but in between, my colleagues here within the technical support will be able to pick up all those questions as we speak today. We have about 1 hour together. Feel free to ask me any questions at all. No question is a silly question. You know that by now, yeah? So I love tough questions at the same time. I may want to try to answer all of them. And hopefully we'll see some really interesting questions as well. So there you go, guys, how to prepare for job interviews today. Now, a little bit about myself for those of you who have just met me today. My name is Hanie, and in the circle, I am known as a career doctor. 10 years ago, George and I, we co-founded Dragonfire Corporate Solutions. It has been a very interesting 10 years journey for both of us and for our clients as well. We specialize in career management and organizational development consulting. Some of the areas that we work in is in career transition and outplacement, obviously in change management, talent career management. We work a lot with organizations as well as individuals such as yourself. So it has been a really interesting 10 years journey. I've been doing this for the past, 20 over years. And still, I find it very interesting because every single day is a little bit different than the others. And I get to work with beautiful and interesting people almost every day. So that's a little bit about me. Now, before we get into our session, I just want to make sure that we are on a same page on the kind of things that we're going to discuss today. So there are 3 things that we're going to discuss today, right? Because of the time constraint, I figured there are so many things that we have to cover for interview sessions. And for those of you who have experienced my approach to career coaching, all of you would know that I often emphasize preparation before we get into the motion of going into the interview sessions itself. So because of this, so many spectrums or dimensions of interview sessions, I figured within that 1 hour we can nail out 3 things which I think would be quite interesting for all of you. So what are we going to discuss today? Topic number 1 would be the types of interviews that many of us would go through, I suppose, in our entire life. There's so many types of interviews. However, we're going to nail down several types only, which are quite often many of you will go through, right? So types of interviews. Number 2, the 3 stages of interview process, all candidates must remember. So there are 3 stages of interview process, all candidates must remember. Not 5, but 3 stages. All right, and topic number 3, this will be your interview toolbox. So in the topic number 3, interview toolbox, I would highlight to you some of my things that needs to go into your toolbox, some of your considerations that needs to be thought of, and some of the success things that you may have to do in order to have success interview sessions. All right, now let's see what are the things that we need to take a look at. Excuse me about that. All right, now before we start even talking about interview sessions, a kind of interviews, a kind of panels, a kind of questions, tough questions and all that, first I would like to highlight to all of you that it begins with the right mindset. Why is this important to get into an interview session with the right mindset? First, we need to retrain our brain. This is for a very good reason, all right? So what are we talking about when I say it starts with the right mindset? Okay, number 1, it is simply because having the right mindset will provide us with self-confidence. It allows us some time to create conversation with ourselves and to be prepared for that moment before we actually sit in the interview session at all. So the positivity thoughts that needs to come in first. Number 2, simply because with the right mindset before we get into the session, is that we should not come in with a desperate mindset. I know for sure that all of us sit into an interview because we want that, sexy role. It's a very interesting job, or simply because we need a job. So due to these various reasons, the kind of things that we have up here will be articulated through the kind of words that come up from our mouth and the kind of behavior that we are demonstrating towards our panel interviewers. And that is the reason why, ladies and gentlemen, we need to start with the right mindset, that we're not desperate for a job. All right, so the right mindset should also come in with the fact that we have all these skills, we have all these experiences, we have the competencies, we have the passion to provide support and helping out our new organization to be better at what they do. We are not only a number, but we are a competent person to come in and contribute in the organization. All right, so with the right mindset comes all the right scripts that we have prepared way before. Remember, we have 3 stages. All right, so first and foremost, we need to retrain our brains on the kind of mindset before we get even into the interview sessions. All right, now I'm just going to give all of you a bit of a tips here. The aim is to find the balance to the skill. Now, why is this important? Remember when we talk about the mindset, when we come into the interview, that we have the skills, passion, interest, competencies, and all that. Basically, what we're doing is to find the balance to the skill. So if you look at my slide here, it's very simple. Okay, if you look at the skill on the left-hand side versus the one that I have here on the right-hand side, right? So the one on the left, the skill is balanced. Yeah, so you have the employer and you, they are balanced. They need you as much as you need them. They're looking for the right fit as much as you are also looking for the right fit within the organization. They are looking for people who would contribute to the organization for the growth of the organization. Same thing for you, vice versa. You are also looking for a platform. You're looking for a place for you to grow. What do you call that? For you to grow in terms of professionally as well as personally. So you want to make sure that these are balanced. All right, so balance the scale versus the scale on the right hand side. You will see that the employer scale side is higher than yours. This is simply because it is the negotiation bit, you know, the conversation is not balanced, and most likely that if it's not balanced, especially towards what your needs are, it will not be met. All right, so most likely either you get the right job or you're not happy. The right job means it can be anything. Yeah, the right salary, the right location, the right role, but there are other things that may not be balanced and that may not have a fit with what you're looking for. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about all of this in my later part of presentation. All right, so remember guys, the aim here is to find the balance with the scale. Okay, now with that in mind, let me start by introducing you a few things next. Now, do you know that there are gazillion types of interviews? No, I'm just digressing. So do you know that there are several types of interviews that you will walk through in your interview process? So all throughout your life, you know, coming up from universities, mid-level, even at senior leadership, there are all kinds or all types of interview sessions. So I have mapped it out here. There are 5 here. Actually, there are about 10 to 12 types of interviews. I'm going to just quickly highlight to all of you what it means. All right, so 5 types of interviews here. There are formal and informal interviews. So that's number 1. Sequential and panel interview. So that's the second type of interview. Group interview, there's situational interview, there's phone or video call interview, there's lunch interviews. So why is it important for all of us to understand, you know, the types of interviews? Simply because it translates to the kind of preparation that we need to do prior to attending to such interviews. Now, I'm going to just give an example, right? So formal and informal interviews. Formal, obviously, you sit in front of a panel of interviewers, or one interviewer. It might be an HR manager, or it might be with the hiring manager, or both, or a panel. So very formal. You actually prepare yourself to answer questions and all that. But informal interviews may also sound like lunch or coffee interviews, where the interviewer might be a third party outsourced to have a conversation with you, and you go out and have coffee, and they will tell you, oh, it's okay, you know, take your time, chill, this is not interview. Guys, don't believe that, because it is an interview. So as much as it sounded like it's such a chillax session, do take precaution or measurement that you behave the best, you present the best of you in such an interview session. All right, so there's formal and informal. There's also sequential and panel interview. This is mostly a group of people who will be interviewing you from one group to another. Group interview is what it is. Yeah, so basically you will be sitting in an interview session where there will be others who will sit together with you, so you get to hear what the others are answering, how they answer, the kind of questions most likely will be similar to the ones that's been asked across the board. So if you get a question, the other, say another 5, will receive more or less the same questions at the same time. So group interview usually happens for those role or posts that they are recruiting in bulk. So, you know, like retail, there will be customer service, for example, because there are a lot of people who needs to be interviewed, and therefore usually the decision making is to have group interviews, which is happening simultaneously in several groups or several rooms altogether. All right, so situational interview, for example, this is very interesting. They might want to ask you situational interviews to see how you have responded, the kind of actions that you have taken, or the kind of actions that you might have encountered in your work. And they wanted to know how is this going to affect the kind of decision making that you have. All right, so that's situational interview. Now, I'm just quickly moving forward to phone or video call interview. This is very, very popular nowadays, especially for the past 2 years since the pandemic. Not many interview takes place still now, for example, because of the pandemic, right? So usually phone or video call interview happens as a first round vetting session. They will ask you a few questions, a few vetting questions, and as much as it sounded uncomfortable because you are not seeing the other person, you are not seeing the interviewer, this is one of the trickiest to my mind and through my observation to prep for a candidate to have the first round interview session, okay, especially for phone, because you can't see the facial expression, the body language, and all that. All you are hearing are questions. Okay, and video call interviews, this is also a little bit tricky, especially if you don't have the right device, you don't have the right technology, not enough data, for example. So these are some of the challenges that you may encounter during these types of interviews. I have also encountered, and it's not stated here, I have also encountered new ways of interview sessions. For example, the first round of vetting is being done by bot. So they send you a list of questions through your WhatsApp and you just start typing out answers. And you kind of, realize after a while that you're not actually chatting to an actual person, but you are chatting to a bot. Yeah, and these are all AI driven technology. Very, very interesting new techniques to first round vetting. But I also think it also a skill set that we must learn and understand on how to answer such interview approach to explore new jobs in the market. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen, the types of interviews that is quite common, I would say, in the market. There are other types of interviews that's happening right now. Big organizations, for example, may run a couple of days of sessions just to observe behaviors, to observe leadership style, to observe communication, to observe time management, etc., etc. So there are so many ways that has been implemented and introduced into the market. Again, as I mentioned, these are only the top 5. There are about another 6 to 7 types of job interviews that if you guys are interested to find out further, just connect with me. All right, now types of interviews. I'm going to just quickly move on to the next one, which is types of tricky questions that you may encounter in such situation. Okay, so there are some tips that I want to introduce here, what they mean really in terms of tricky questions. Okay, so questions that usually comes out in interview sessions, they may be any one of these or a combination of this: situational questions, behavioral questions, and competency based. Okay, so the type of interview questions, again, depending on the kind of role that you're applying or the kind of industry that the role exists. All right, now, for example, if they are asking you situational questions, What they're really looking for is to provide you with the opportunity to display your skill sets, your knowledge, or your approach to the specific scenario and how you would have handled it. All right, so they may ask you questions, examples of the actions, on how and on how you're going to demonstrate your approach to solving such issues. For example, the question may sound like, please share with us on a time when you have to manage a conflict situation with your supervisor, so something like that. All right, so the next one, which is competency-based. Now, this is very, very interesting as well, because it allows you to demonstrate your knowledge and skills in a specific, using specific tools, for example. So they will test you or assess you or provide you with a list of surveys. It can be anything. It can be, pen and paper. It can be using some web-based or even questions. It is to test you for your attributes, knowledge, and behaviors that will lead you to be successful in that job. So this is competency-based. It can be on communication. It can be a specific tool, so it might be on your soft skills as well as technical skills. Right, so it's competency-based. Now, last but not least, that would be behavioral-based questions. Right, this is to assess your character. Very, very interesting. Again, I find that all of these types of interview questions are very interesting because it's very human. These are very human-centric questions. Okay, so what does it mean by behavioral based questions? This is to assess your character. As I mentioned, it is specifically to assess the how you have approached challenges, situations, and in order for them to understand you further on the kind of behavior that you will undertake, so that you will be assessed and that they are happy with whatever that they're hearing based on your feedback, and making that decision whether to escalate your application or they're going to stop you there. Okay, so behavioral basically is to assess your character. All right, so these are the three types of tricky questions: situational, behavioral, and competency. All right, so moving on. What else have I in store for all of you? Okay, now remember I mentioned about the 3 stages of preparation to interview sessions. I'm now introducing you to stage 1. All right, so stage 1 is basically on tips on how to prepare yourself. This is your self-prep. These are the things that you need to do even way before you attend any interview. All right, so again, it depends on whether you're being called for interview tomorrow or the next after and all that. However, if you are listening or watching my session at this point of time, most likely you are getting ready to attend any interview, which is just around the corner. All right, so stage one, ladies and gentlemen, is self-preparation. I have listed out here about 8 items, I would say, that you really need to address and get it done now so that you don't feel pressed for time. Okay, so number 1, what I'm going to talk about is to get ready your master copy of CV or resume. So basically, if you haven't already done this, take a look at your CV or your resume, get it updated, get it proofread, and have a few versions of it. But what I am also advocating is that to have a master copy where you plonk it everything inside there, and then you extract it out and customize it to every application or rather almost application that you have, and customize it to what you're applying for, based on the JD, based on the organization and all that. However, baseline here, what's most important is to get your CV or resume right. Okay, get it updated, get it proofread, and get it ready. All right, so that's number one. Number two, what else? If you have received an invitation for an interview, gotta make sure you have the right location, you have the right time, dates are confirmed, because sometimes what happened is, and I've seen this, right? So they an organization will have quite a number of locations for interview sessions. They may have it in their HQ, they may have it in their other branches all over Malaysia, for example, all over KL. And because of this, there is an influx of information in the email or in the WhatsApp. You tend to miss something. All right. So in order for you to make sure that you do not bungle up on this small details, but very, very important details, you need to reconfirm. You may WhatsApp or email. Best is to email, so that you don't get accidentally deleting all this pertinent information. Reconfirm the location, reconfirm the time and date. All right, because sometimes the date just may not look right, but you ignore it. Okay, so I've seen it before where people get confused, they don't log it in their Outlook or in their diary, they just overlook. All right, so location, time, date, please confirm that. What else? JD. All right, so what is JD? It is job description, very, very important. Sometimes you may receive invitation for an interview and they say there is no JD. Now, you've got to be careful with that, because it may sound like as if you're going to do everything. All right, so for a good preparation to attend an interview, please make sure, if you don't already have done this, please request the job description. Okay, so job description, this particular job description, if it is in other platforms, for example, it is already, mostly it is stated in the vacancy. You may say job requirement. In this role, you will be covering a few duties and things like that. All right, so job description is very, very important for you to understand what does it entails you to be successful in that particular role. Okay, so what are the requirements? So this JD would be kind of your guideline in order for you to be successful during your interview session. Okay, now item number 4, interview script. I'm going to drill down a little bit more on what does it mean by interview script. And number 5, documents and your portfolios. This is very, very important as well. And documents and portfolios, basically what it means is that you need to get all your documentations in order. So again, depending on the kind of application that you're applying or the kind of organization that you're applying, you may want to have a nice little portfolio that consists of your transcripts, for example, your CV or your resume, copies of your CVs or your resumes. Make sure that you have a few copies, because sometimes they will ask you a copy and you didn't bring any, or they will ask you to bring the original documents to be cited and you had forgotten. All right, so make sure that you have a couple of copies for each of these documents, and just load it into your portfolio, and you can share this during the interview session. So for those of you who have very specific portfolios, like design and web design or anything else that is visual, either you park those on an online platform, or you may have put it in a thumb drive or something like that, or even some printouts to share, and make sure that the link is up to date, so that your interviews can access all these visual portfolios online. All right, so make sure that your documents and portfolios are in order. Now, what else? Number 6, you need to know who sits in the interview panels. Now, a lot of people ask me, why is this important? Very, very simple reason. You need to know who sits in. For example, if it is a middle management, all right, role that you are applying, and you found out that the first interview that you need to attend is the HR manager, all right, and not with the hiring manager. So basically what will happen, most likely what will happen is that they will be discussing about the first round vetting. Okay, why did you leave your job? Why is there a gap? You know, all the HR questions, all right? Now, if there is a possibility that the hiring manager sits in, now this gets a little bit more interesting, because the extra questions that might be asked of you might be on the technical questions, competency-based questions, and you now can prepare yourself better. Do not be anxious if you discover that there will be a few other panelists who sits in the interview sessions, because some of them may be providing that third eye for support for the HR folks, as well as the hiring manager. All right, so interview panelists, very important. If you don't know, you ask. Pick up the phone or email or WhatsApp whoever has contacted you and ask, may I know who will be sitting in the interview session? Simple, right? Number 7, attire. Now, this is very important. I know for a fact there was one candidate who failed to get into her interview session that morning because she decided to iron her baju kurung in the morning. And because of that haste, she was rushing and all that, she has accidentally cranked up the iron, and it burned her favorite baju kurung, and there goes the morning. All right, so attire, make sure that you have prepared your attire way earlier, so that you don't get pressed for time. Okay, last but not least is logistics. If you don't have a car, make sure that you can get your Grab on time. If you have a car or a motorbike or cycle, make sure that the fuel is full, your touch and go is topped up, RFID is loaded, that kind of stuff. And also you got to make sure that you time your time on how long you get to the interview session. All right, so that's stage 1. Now, I wouldn't give this justice in terms of preparing for yourself for self-preparation. Yeah, if you are a person with special needs, I find that not many people talk about this. About special needs. Okay, so if you are a person with special needs, this is very, very important. Do plan ahead. Do plan ahead. If you have to scout for the location, do so. If you have to take a look at where the building is and how the layout is, especially if you need to use the ramp and all that, scout the location, and especially so take note of how the building layout is. All right, so plan ahead of time. It might be a couple of days before that. That's fine as well. All right, now if you are also a person with special needs, disclosure is a choice. Why is this a choice? It is especially a choice for you to choose when your disability is depending on whether it's visible or invisible to others. All right, so it is entirely up to you whether you want to reveal this or what we call this as a disclosure. All right, it is your choice, it is your prerogative in order for you to share of your special needs. All right, now there might be a time as well that you are quite stressed on how do you approach this when being called for an interview. Now, a person with special needs, sometimes they get fixated on certain topics, that they get sleepless nights. All right, so talk about what you do well, right? Share success stories. Remember of the time that you've done really, really well in certain jobs that you've done. Talk about that. All right, talk about what you do well in your life, in your past jobs, specific skills, for example. Stay positive. Not all jobs are for you, all right, and not all of you fits into a job, all right. So stay positive and know your work values, all right. I also would like to highlight here that do take note or know your rights, what kind of questions that may or may not be asked for special needs individuals. All right, so if you're special persons, I would encourage you to take note of my sharing here, because this is, I think, very, very important for us to be inclusive whenever we attend an interview. So if even the organization is not exactly quite there yet, so you are already demonstrating the fact that you have adopted and adapted to inclusivity in your approach for attending interviews. All right, so there you go. Now, stage 2, the interview day. Now, this is very, very important. Interview day, again, similar to stage 1, all right? So logistics, attire, portfolio, time. Time, very, very important. Check your emotion, feeling, self, and all that, right? So you gotta make sure that you get on time. I always encourage people to be there about half an hour way early or 45 minutes early, so that you can, check your attire, check your notes, check your baju, go to the washroom and all that, right? So interview day, you have already prepped way earlier, so this is a day where you shine and you showcase what you're made of. All right, so stage 2. Now stage 3. Before I get to stage 3, sorry guys. Before I get to stage 3, now on a day of interview, are you a person with special needs, right? I just wanted to make sure here that if you're wired differently, okay, so if you're wired differently, this is a very particular topic that not many people wants to share, right? But all right. So if you are differently wired, right? If you are, say, a professional, for example, if you are experiencing anxiety, if you're ADHD, if you're dyslexic, if you're autism, so if you're wired differently, you are special, you are with special needs, right? So these are other type of special needs. Try to do this. This is my tips for all of you. Practice with friends. Remember, we prepared earlier, right? Practice with friends. Take down notes. Do not overshare. Sometimes out of our anxiety situation, we tend to overshare, we tend to oversay, we tend to share a lot of other things which are not useful at all during our interview session. All right, so have a reminder handy. For example, if you have a pen, that pen will remind us, do not overshare, okay? Practice breathing techniques. You may want to practice this. Have meaningful checklists. So those of you with ADHD, for example, and have the tendency to have anxiety attack, have meaningful checklists. You bring your notebook, have a checklist ready and done days earlier. Preparation is the key here, guys. All right, so meaningful checklist. Bring your own notebook and your highlighter or your pen, something that you're familiar with. And if you need to fill up a form, for example, instead of borrowing a pen from someone else, you have your own comfort pen that you know that you can use it to write down in the forms. And bring an anchor to wear. So sometimes some of you who are in special needs like this need an anchor. So some clients that I have, for example, they have anchor, for example, a pen, all right, or something wearable, a chain, a ring, a watch, for them to anchor in their thoughts for the moment. Okay, so these are some of the tips that I would like to highlight to you, that all of you can do this. So again, it's not a very popular topic to share, but I figured that I need to address this because it's important, right? Okay, now shifting to tricky questions. Okay, so tricky questions. I know that some of the burning questions covers this. In terms of preparation of the tricky questions, I've highlighted here quite a bit of the tricky questions that you may want to encounter. These are some of the questions. These are real questions that I would like all of you to take away and kind of prepare yourself, so that you can say, okay, so I think I am ready to answer all of these questions. Okay, so questions. Very, very deceiving, simple question. Tell me about yourself. All right, so this particular question comes in variances of spectrum on how it's being asked. The standard question is, tell me about yourself. It may sound like, please tell me about yourself, and what have you been up to for the past 5 years. So it comes in variances of this one question. All right. Number 2, why are you interested in this role? So this is, again, it sounded like a simple question, but it's actually a tricky question, right? What are your salary expectations? This is, again, a very popular question, many questions that comes in over the years. And we need to address this with sensitivity. Okay, you were a business owner. Now this is for those who have had run businesses before, you know, small businesses, big businesses. If you're a business owner, why did you close shop? All right, so this is one tricky question that you have to prepare on how to answer them well. Next question that you may encounter. Yeah, you are overqualified or underqualified. Why should we hire you? Or why do you want to join us? This is another variance of question in terms of addressing, you know, why they should hire you, right? So the next question is, what is your greatest weakness? So I've heard this. I've heard the answer. Madam, one of my greatest weaknesses is that I am unable to wake up in the morning. No, we don't go there. All right, so we don't go there. We don't even want to say that. But there are tricks on how to answer this particular question. All right, so what is your greatest weakness? Why is there a gap in your work history? This is one question. Be prepared for it. For those of you who have career break, you need to create a narrative on the why and the how you filled it up during those gaps. Okay, again, why should we hire you? This is particularly quite similar to the ones that I've read. How would your colleague describe you? Now, this is a little bit of a, you know, mind-boggling question, because now you have to really figure out how would others describe you of, and tell me about your leadership style. So this is particularly interesting if you are in a position before that has been leading a team, big or small, and you need to know what kind of leadership style that you have. All right, so I hope this has somewhat prompted you to think of you know, other things in terms of questions. Now, stage 3, post-interview. This is very, very important. A lot of people forget that there's stage 3. You know, they go into an interview and then they forget about it. And then when somebody calls in and to say, hey, thank you very much for attending our interview today, and some of them will say, oh, okay, which interview was this? Don't go there. All right, so stage 3, post-interview, keep note over where you've gone to, you know, virtually, face-to-face, whatsoever, put a date and all that. Have a little notebook that you keep on your table so that you are keeping tab over all these activities, all right? So stage 3, post-interview, what are the things that you need to do? Now, you have attended the interview. Before you leave the room, thank everyone in the panel. Thank you very much, Madam, Sir, Mr. Ahmad, Mr. Jack, for your time today. And I look forward to speaking to all of you again in the next few days, for example. Right? So making sure that you are already in the organization, making sure that you are already in the process. You are making time that day as well, and time is valuable. So make sure that they know this as well. All right? Before you leave, one thing that many people have forgotten to ask, what's the next step? Usually they just say thank you and they walk away. All right, don't do that. Now, before you step out, please ask for the next step and timeline. For example, Mr. Ahmad, thank you so much for your time today. What will be the next step after this? And when would I be able to hear from you again? All right, and then send a thank you note via email. do follow up within a reasonable time, like 5 days or 7 days, that's good. If you fail in the interview session, ask for feedback. If possible, ask for feedback. If not, move on to the next opportunity. There are other opportunities available out there. All right, so that's post interview and stage. Now, I want to also take you guys onto the what I call the interview toolbox. All right, so I love toolbox, and I feel that it is a great analogy to have a lot of things inside it. So there's career toolbox, and there's also interview toolbox. So what do I recommend for all of you to put into your interview toolbox? So what's inside your toolbox, guys? So what's inside your interview toolbox? These are my recommendations and suggestions. An updated CV or resume, and a link and a profile. It might be some other platform. All right, a JD, a job description, an organization chart of the new company, the website of the company that you're going to. All right, the website and other references. It can be anything, and a short description of what the company is all about, so that you can articulate whenever you've been asked, so what do we do? What do you think we are doing here? All right, so can you explain a little bit about our organization? So a short description of what the company is all about is fantastic. List of interviewing panels, list of interview questions interviewers might ask. All right, so this is very important. I suggest 10 questions. It might push to 15 questions. List of questions you have of them, or to even hiring manager and HR. All right, your work values, job mapping. This is important. A selection of attire ready to go, and you need to make sure that you have the right technology and the relevant device, data, etc., that makes it worthwhile and for you to sit in interview session. Okay, so those are my recommendation in the interview toolbox. Now let me just do a quick time check. We have a little bit of time now. I know that I have asked all of you to ask questions. Looks like questions are coming in. And I think let's start with questions here. Now, my colleague at the back end from the support tech has given me questions. All right, so let's hear out the first questions that come in. All right, okay, so question 1. I want to become a VR developer. All right, I am currently a fresh grad. Any advice on how to start? Right, so this is a great start to a lot of interesting stuff, which is VR, one of my favorite area to explore. And I think there's all kinds of things that we can do with VR. All right, so I'm currently on fresh grad, and advice on how to start. Now, the fact that you are fresh grad makes it more interesting, because we have hopefully many years to come that there are new technologies surrounding VR. So if a few things that you may want to check out is to do a market mapping on, what are the potential kind of work or roles or job that is available in Malaysia and outside of Malaysia. How big is this? How big is the market? Okay, so what are things which is related to VR? So these are your consideration before you embark on this journey, and the kind of technology that you need to learn, the skill set that you need to learn. How do you become successful to become a VR developer? So all of these things, which companies, for example, is it available in Malaysia, or do you need to travel, or you can do this hybrid, all these considerations, right? So it may sound interesting right now, but sometimes we have to make that decision. For example, if you have to travel outside of Malaysia for a few years, now with the pandemic going and all that, is this feasible right now? Okay, so those are questions that you may have to ask yourself in terms of going into the market that you want to go in job-wise. All right. Question number 2. Okay, so this is interesting. Question number 2, it says here, I am a 35-year-old male, all right, unemployed, okay, for almost a year now because of the pandemic. So sorry to hear. I would like to work on IT field, though it's only my passion. Okay, and I don't have any certificate in IT. Will company hire me? Okay, so there are a few things going on with this question. All right, so he's 35, male, unemployed, all right, because of the pandemic. I would like to work on IT field, though it's only my passion, all right? So IT is his passion, but he doesn't have any certificate in IT. All right, will company hire me? That's another question. So will company hire you? Yes and no. Will the company hire you? Yes. Yes, if it's not IT or technical related, they might hire you. So I'm not quite sure what sort of transferable skills that you have or the background that you have before this. I will have I will say yes, because there's always opportunity for us to present the best of us to new employers. Okay, so if you don't have an IT certificate, that might be a little bit of a challenge, simply because a lot of the opportunities in the IT industry nowadays need to have some skill sets, some technical skill set and know-how, knowledge in order for you to start doing something, unless it's pretty generic. You can get all these, micro credentials available online, all right? So I hope don't give up. Okay, would company hire you? Yes, definitely, but you need to know what you can do first. So it's like a matching, right? So this is what Mr. Employer, this is what I can do. What do you have? Same thing. All right, so if you don't have, then it's kind of hard for any employer to hire you. I know passion sounds interesting, but sometimes you need to bundle it up with a skill set as well. Okay, so I hope, I wish you all the best. Now, question number three. Okay. All right, this is interesting. It talks about salary, right? Just doing a quick time check here. All right, so question number three, this is a burning question. HR says that the expected salary is too high from what they usually offer, or your current salary and expected salary is way too high. How do we counter? Okay, so salary negotiation is one of my favorite topics when we go into interview session, all right? It is an art. Salary negotiation is an art. It's not so much about anything else, but it is an art. You need to work for it. Okay, my tips number one is you need to know what is the market hiring for. Okay, you need to know what the market is paying for. If the average market is paying for a spectrum, X amount of money here, minimum, X amount of money here, median, and X amount of money tops, for example, you need to come up with a number on here. And this is what we call enoughness. So what is a good number for you that you can wake up in the morning, go to work with the traffic jam, pay your bills, bring bread to the table, go for holidays, have your spa time, eat good food, pay for your pets, kibbles, all of those things. So those are enoughness, and also don't forget some savings, all right, and some aspirations for you to, cost of aspirations for you to cover, climb Mount Kinabalu or anything like that. Those are enoughness. Park that on a number and see what is the, where does your number sits in the spectrum of what the market is paying. So once you get that, you have a number, then you can negotiate. Otherwise, then either you're asking too much or you're asking too low. Okay. Now, last but not least question. Again, I'm just minding over time here. So what is the next question that comes in? All right. The next question is, where do you see yourself 5 years later? All right. So it's kind of vague, kind of neither here nor there. sometimes we're not quite sure why is this being asked. 5 years down the road, I can't even see what I'm going to have for lunch tomorrow. All right, but here's the trick, right? So where do you see yourself 5 years later? Think beyond tomorrow. Think beyond the next week. Think what are the life goals and professional goals that you want to achieve. It doesn't have to be specifically 5 years. It can be in the future. So your future, you may decide 2 years, 3 years, whatever, right? But it may sound like this. 5 years. I see myself leading a team leading a team, and I do understand that your organization do provide crossovers into other countries as well. I would be very happy if I were to be given the opportunity to do so, right? So you don't really have to answer the question head to head, unlike our time back in school days. But you may share your aspiration, your career aspiration. You want your own P&L, you want to lead your own team, you want to work cross borders, share that. All right, so that's how you answer such question. All right, so next question. We have a few minutes to go. All right, so I have 5 minutes to go. I'll try to answer this for this particular gentleman. His question is this: is it okay to be too honest during the interview? Okay, I'm not quite sure, Mr. Gentleman, on what does it mean by being too honest. But if being too honest means you're shooting yourself in the foot and making sure that you will never get a recall for the interview session again, no. All right, the idea is to present the best of you. Why are you saying the worst of you? Okay, just like looking for life partners. Okay, and you want to present the best of you first, and then only you work on the relationship. You need to start from somewhere. You want to bring the best of you in the interview session. Okay, so to your question, is it okay to be too honest? I don't know what is the spectrum of too honest. I know that you have to be honest, but too honest, I'm not quite sure. We have to have a conversation around this. So good question. All right, and last but not least, okay, I'm not quite sure whether I'll be able to answer this question, but I'll try. All right, so the last question here: how do you handle the situation whereby your education does not align with your professional experience? Given how challenging job hunting right now, example, engineering grad driver, engineering grad. How do we tackle situational bias during interview? Okay, very interesting. Right, I may not be able to give much justice to answer this question, but suffice to say this: if you are a fresh grad, then obviously this may not be a big question at all. But having said that, if you're already having a few years under your belt, say 5, 6 years, and you've done a lot of things, you've achieved a lot of things, not done a lot of things. Done and achieve are two totally different things. When you have achieved so much and yet you only have SPM, and there are questions surrounding those questions, the thing is most likely is that that's how you present it, that you emphasize your education first versus your other achievement. I know for a fact, and this is tough, and this is tough love, guys. Remember, mindset. How do we present ourselves is how we fix our mindset first. If we are so fixated on certain things that has happened 20 gazillion years ago and we are still presenting it now, people will remember. But if we don't, then people don't know or don't even remember. So all they will remember is about the achievement that you're going to present to them. Remember, you are presenting the best of you. Why are you talking about what has not happened or hasn't happened 5 years earlier? Right? So bring the best of you guys. Okay. So again, even if you have a career break, you had all kinds of credentials before this, you had a career break, and then you go back into the job market, and there will be questions surrounding your situation. Again, the question is, how honest will you want to do? You have to be honest. Okay, you have to be honest. I got laid off, for example. I received BSS, and because of the job situation, I was unable to come back into the job market. Therefore, I am here today to present to you my credentials based on the research that I've done about your organization and the kind of requirement that you're looking for. I believe I have that. And focus on the achievement that you've done. Don't focus on the things that you don't have. So that's my tips, guys. There you go. Any other question? I think if there is any other question, I welcome all of you to continue sharing in the live chat box, and I'll be very happy to answer them later on. So there you go, guys. 1 hour of sharing with all of you on tips, tricks, and thoughts and opinions on how to make sure that you attend successful interview sessions. Thank you so much, and I hope that all of you will attend successful interview sessions, get a job, and be happy and successful. There you go. Thank you.